Why did no one else see it? The flicker in his hand, the subtle twitch of a man who wasn't tired at all but waiting. The night carried a stillness that pressed on her chest like a weight. Humidity clung to her uniform, damp fabric sticking to her skin as if the air itself was trying to slow her down. Diesel fumes lingered, mixing with the earthy scent of dust and gravel. She shifted her rifle, adjusting the strap across her shoulder. The convoy rumbled closer, engines low and steady, headlights cutting white paths through the dark. To anyone else, it was routine. To her, it was a warning. Her breath slowed. She had learned long ago that fear sharpened if you let it. The only way to keep it at bay was to choke it with silence. Her commander's voice filled the comms, calm, measured, as though the night could be contained by orders alone. Eyes open, routine pass, no surprises tonight. Routine, that word again. How many times had she heard it? How many times had others believed in it only to be betrayed by it? She hated it almost as much as she hated silence when it came from the wrong places. Routine had nearly killed her once, and the memory of it, the fire, the screaming, the dust-swallowing voices, still bled through her ribs every time she closed her eyes. She pressed the memory down. Tonight demanded all of her. The guard shifted at the gate. At first glance he was nothing. A man drowning in his own uniform, rifle hanging low, eyes half-lidded with boredom. The others laughed when they saw him. One soldier even whispered over comms, "Look at him," could fall asleep standing. Chuckles crackled through the headsets, but she didn't laugh. Because she was watching his thumb. Barely moving, resting on the trigger guard, then twitch, again, almost like a pulse. Her chest tightened. This wasn't laziness. This was calculation disguised as fatigue. "Something's wrong," she whispered. The comms went silent. Someone muttered back, half amused, "He's just a guard, harmless." But she didn't buy harmless, not anymore. The headlights of the convoy brightened as the vehicles approached the gate. Engines hummed low, a vibration she felt through her boots. For one brief moment she closed her eyes, and the memory rushed back. Another gate, another outpost, another night where she had thought the guard was harmless. The explosion had painted the night in fire. The shockwave had thrown her down into dust and bone. The screams that followed weren't strangers, they were hers, her people, her responsibility. She opened her eyes, forcing herself back to the present. No mistakes this time, not again. The guard straightened. His body shed the mask of weakness like a snake slipping out of its skin, shoulders squared, eyes cut sharp. He was no fool. He was a predator who had been waiting, watching, biding time. Her heartbeat slowed, her finger curled. "Something's wrong," she repeated louder. "Stand down," her commander snapped. "Do not fire." But she didn't move, couldn't. Her gaze locked on the man at the gate. She saw it, that flicker of intent in his eyes. He was going to move. She knew it as surely as she knew her own name. And when he did, when his hand darted for the detonator clipped to his belt, she fired. The shot split the silence, a single crack against the night. The man dropped. The detonator slipped from his hand, clattering uselessly against the dirt. For a moment there was nothing. No engine hum, no calm chatter, just silence, the kind that suffocates. She lowered her rifle, her shoulders heavy, her pulse hammering through her veins. "Jesus," someone whispered over comms. Another voice, incredulous. How the hell did she know? The convoy screeched to a halt. Boots hit the ground as soldiers poured out, rifles raised, eyes scanning. But the threat, the obvious one, was already over. And yet she knew. That man hadn't been the threat, not the only one. He was the mask, the distraction. Her commander's voice finally returned, low and rough. "Secure the gate, find the device." They moved quickly, but the air was still thick with disbelief. They glanced at her like she was something unfamiliar, something they couldn't quite define. Not relief, not gratitude, not yet, just unease, because she had broken routine. She had acted before permission. But permission had almost gotten them killed. She walked away from the group, her boots crunching gravel, the night swallowing her silhouette. She kept her rifle close, her breathing steady, but inside her chest, chaos. She wanted to collapse. She wanted to scream. She wanted to tell them everything about the village, the last time, the mistake that had cost lives because she hadn't trusted herself. But she didn't, because the truth was hers to carry, and the silence was easier than their pity. The wind picked up, whispering through the power lines above, a lonely hum that scraped against her ears. She tilted her head back, staring into the black sky. No stars, just cloud cover, thick and heavy, like the world itself wanted to keep secrets. Routine, she whispered to herself bitterly. That word would never mean safety to her again. The rest of the unit began to regroup, voices low, scanning the perimeter for more traps. One soldier, younger than the rest, approached her. His helmet sat slightly crooked, his eyes wide in the pale wash of headlights. "How did you know?" he asked softly, almost like a child asking a teacher for a story. She didn't answer. Instead, she looked at him, really looked at him. He still carried innocence in his face, despite the dirt smudges and the lines of fatigue. Innocence she no longer had. "Sometimes," she finally murmured, "weakness is just a disguise." He frowned, unsure if she meant the guard or herself. But before he could ask more, her commander barked orders, pulling him away. She was alone again, just as she always seemed to be. As the night stretched, unease lingered. They found more devices near the checkpoint. Buried wires, a network waiting to be triggered. The guard had only been one part of it. Her commander didn't look at her. Not once. Not when he ordered men to sweep the area. Not when they cleared the last of the traps. Not when the convoy was finally cleared to move. But she didn't need his look. She already knew what was in it. Doubt, distrust, maybe even anger, because she hadn't followed orders, because she had chosen her instinct over his command. She walked behind the others as they moved out, her rifle steady but her mind restless. Each step pressed ghosts deeper into her chest. Each silence reminded her of the screams she'd buried years ago. And yet she felt something else too, something small, something dangerous. Hoping. Because for once she hadn't hesitated. For once she had acted before the mistake. And though no one thanked her, though no one even spoke to her, she knew deep down she had saved them. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough. The convoy rolled forward into the night, engines low, headlights piercing the dark, and somewhere out there in the shadows, someone was watching, someone who knew their plan had been broken, someone who wouldn't forget the woman who had seen through the mask. The war had shifted, quietly, silently, without declaration. And she could feel it. She touched the scar beneath her collar, hidden by fabric, a reminder of everything she had lost, and she whispered a promise only the night could hear. Never again. The road stretched on, the convoy disappeared into darkness. And in the silence that followed, the war breathed, waiting. Why had no one asked her why she fired? Not really asked, not with sincerity. The convoy rolled on, engines groaning against the uneven road, tires grinding gravel into dust. Dim red tail lights flickered against the darkness, turning the night into a tunnel of muted glow. She sat in the rear, rifle propped against her leg, helmet shadowing her face. No one spoke to her. The men filled the silence with their own chatter, low murmurs about the checkpoint, about how close it had been, about how crazy it was she pulled the trigger without orders. She caught fragments. Could have been a disaster. Still think she got lucky. Don't care what she says, it was a risk. Not one word of thanks. Her jaw clenched. She focused on her breathing, steadying it like she'd been trained. Inhale, exhale, calm, but inside her chest roared with unspoken fire. Lucky, that was what they thought of her. The word rattled her bones. She hadn't been lucky, she had seen it. She had lived that moment before in another place, another life. And the reason she had acted wasn't luck at all, it was guilt. The vehicle bounced over a rut, jerking her back to the present. She gripped the edge of her seat and stared out the small, reinforced window. Black fields stretched endlessly on either side. Here and there, broken trees jutted like splintered bones against the horizon. The moon hid behind heavy clouds, refusing to show its face. It was too quiet. Her earpiece crackled with the commander's voice. 2 more miles to the outpost. Keep eyes open. Eyes open, as if she could ever close them. She leaned her head back, the vibrations of the convoy rumbling through her skull, and without permission her mind slipped, backward, to the place she avoided. The smell had been the worst part: burnt rubber, charred wood, flesh, smoke choking her lungs as she stumbled through the wreckage of what had once been a village. They had trusted her. She had led the patrol. She had walked past the man at the gate, the guard slouched in his chair, rifle half-hanging, eyes dull. He looked bored. Just another tired villager pressed into service. She hadn't seen it, not then. And when the night exploded, when fire painted the sky and screams bled into the earth, it was already too late. Half her team gone, the villagers who had tried to hide gone, and she had lived, crawling from rubble, deaf in one ear for weeks, shrapnel kissing her skin. Alive, but empty. She had been too slow, too trusting, too blind. That failure had followed her ever since, stitched into her ribs, etched beneath her scars. She never told the others. She never spoke the village's name, but it lived in her silence. It lived in her eyes every time she caught herself staring too long at a man pretending to be weak. That was why she fired tonight. Not because she was reckless, not because she was lucky, but because she refused to let history write the same sentence again. Never again. Convoy halt. The commander's voice snapped her back. The vehicle jolted to a stop. She sat upright, hand on her rifle. What's happening? Roadblock, someone muttered. Her chest tightened. The back hatch opened, letting in the cool bite of night air. The men climbed out, boots crunching dirt. She followed, rifle raised, senses alive. Up ahead, broken cars blocked the road, 3 of them angled like jagged teeth. Their hoods gaped open, engines gutted. Rust clung to their sides. At first glance, they looked abandoned, but she didn't believe in first glances anymore. The commander stepped forward, hand raised for silence. He scanned the wreckage, flashlight beam cutting across twisted metal. The light caught something: wires, thin, delicate. IEDs, he muttered. The younger soldier, the one who'd asked her earlier how she knew, let out a shaky breath. Jesus. Her pulse hammered, but her face stayed calm. She scanned the darkness beyond the wreckage. Fields, shadows, a barn in the distance, its roof caved in. Too many places for eyes to hide. And that's when she felt it. They were being watched. The same way she had felt the guard's eyes before he moved, she felt it now, prickling at the back of her neck, crawling under her skin. Somewhere out there, unseen, someone had them in their sights. She raised her voice, low but firm. We're exposed here. The commander ignored her, kneeling to inspect the wires. His men covered him, rifles aimed outward, but their stances betrayed nerves. One wrong move, one spark, and the road would swallow them whole. She moved closer, eyes scanning the tree line. Her breath fogged faintly in the chill. Then faintly, too faintly, she caught it. A glint, metal catching light. Sniper. Her body froze for half a heartbeat. Then instinct took over. Down, she shouted, throwing herself at the nearest soldier, dragging him flat just as the crack of a rifle split the air. Dirt sprayed inches from where his head had been. Chaos erupted. Men scrambled for cover, bullets tearing into the night. The convoy roared to life, engines straining, lights flaring. Shadows moved in the fields, figures breaking from the dark, rifles flashing. The ambush. Her heart pounded. She pressed against the dirt, firing into the flashes, every shot controlled, deliberate. Around her, the air was alive with thunder, Shouts, gunfire, the hiss of bullets cutting air. The young soldier she'd pulled down looked at her, eyes wide with shock and terror. She met his gaze for a second, steady, unshaken. "You're alive," she told him, before rolling to fire again. The ambush wasn't sloppy. It was coordinated, calculated. Whoever had planned it knew the convoy's path, knew the routine, and the man at the checkpoint hadn't been working alone. This was bigger, much bigger. Minutes stretched into an eternity. Gunfire cracked. Explosions tore chunks of dirt. The convoy fought hard, pushing them back inch by inch. She moved like a shadow among shadows, precise, efficient, her breath steady even as her pulse raged. And then silence. As sudden as it began, the night stilled. Shadows melted into darkness, retreating. The ambush dissolved, leaving only smoke, bodies, and the bitter echo of gunfire. Her commander barked orders, pulling the men back into formation. Casualty checks, ammunition counts, quick regroup. She stood apart, breathing hard, her hands trembling though she tried to still them. She scanned the field, searching the dark. Whoever had pulled the strings wasn't lying among the bodies. The real threat had slipped away. But she had felt it again, the presence, watching, calculating, testing. This wasn't random, this was personal. Later, when the unit regrouped, exhausted, the commander approached her. His face was shadowed, unreadable in the dim glow of the convoy's lights. "You disobeyed orders again," he said. She met his eyes unflinching, and were still alive. A muscle twitched in his jaw. He looked at her like a puzzle he couldn't solve, torn between anger and reluctant respect. But he didn't thank her. He didn't acknowledge that her instincts had saved them twice in one night. Instead, he walked away. The young soldier lingered, helmet crooked, dirt smeared across his cheek. His voice was quiet, almost reverent. "You saved me, twice." She said nothing. She only gave a small nod, then turned away, because she couldn't bear the weight of gratitude, not when she knew the truth, that the only reason she could save him was because she hadn't saved others long ago. As the convoy pushed forward again, the night swallowing them whole, she whispered the same promise she had made before. Never again. But in the silence that followed, another thought crept in. If they knew their routines, if they knew the path, if they knew the checkpoint, then someone on the inside was feeding them. And the thought chilled her more than the night air ever could. Why did the silence feel heavier than the gunfire? It pressed against her chest, thick, unrelenting, like the night itself wanted to crush them. The convoy moved slowly now, engines rattling under strain, every headlight beam trembling across broken asphalt. Dust hung in the air, stirred up by the firefight and refusing to settle. Soldiers rode quiet, shoulders hunched, eyes darting to every shadow. They weren't laughing anymore. The earlier bravado had dissolved into something rawer, fear hidden beneath silence. She sat near the back again, rifle across her lap, helmet tilted forward to hide her face. Her hands were steady, but only because she forced them to be. Inside, she was still shaking. Not from the gunfire, from the realization. Someone had set them up. The ambush had been too precise, too prepared. The wreckage blocking the road, the sniper's position, the timing, it wasn't guesswork. It was knowledge. Someone had given away their route. Someone had told them about the checkpoint. Someone had betrayed them. She leaned back against the cold metal wall of the transport, shutting her eyes for a second. The memory of the young soldier's voice lingered. "You saved me." Twice. His gratitude weighed heavier than the commander's silence. She didn't want thanks. She wanted answers. The outpost loomed in the distance an hour later, a scattering of low buildings wrapped in wire and floodlights. The convoy rolled through the gates, engines groaning, metal creaking. The soldiers dismounted, some stretching, some checking gear, some simply staring at the ground as though it might give them strength. She followed them out, boots crunching gravel, rifle heavy in her grip. The floodlights buzzed overhead, throwing harsh white onto the compound. She scanned the faces around her, men worn down by exhaustion, fear, adrenaline, and yet under it all something else. Mistrust. She felt it like a blade against her skin. They weren't sure whether to see her as a savior or a liability. She had broken orders, twice, and in the military, disobedience carved deep scars. But what was worse, obedience that killed or disobedience that saved? She swallowed the thought, no point asking, not here, not to them. Debrief came fast. The commander stood in the central room, maps spread across the table, radio static filling the air. His voice was tight, clipped, as he ran through the ambush details. The soldiers crowded close, sweat and dirt thick in the room, the scent of metal and fuel clinging to their gear. She stood at the edge of the circle, silent, arms crossed, listening. The checkpoint was compromised, the commander said. Devices buried, sniper cover, enemy knew our route. A soldier muttered, knew our timing too. The commander's jaw tensed. Exactly, which means information leaked. They knew where we'd be and when. Silence followed, thick, uncomfortable, eyes shifted, suspicion whispering without words. Her stomach knotted, she had felt it. Now it was confirmed, there was a traitor. She wanted to speak, to ask the question burning in her chest. How long has the leak been happening? But she didn't. She stayed quiet because her voice in that moment would only deepen the distance already growing between her and the rest. The commander finished, dismissing them with orders for rest and rotation. The men filed out, shoulders slumped, helmets under arms. She stayed behind, staring at the map, routes marked in red, checkpoints noted, patterns too clear, too predictable. She whispered under her breath, routine kills. And for a moment she thought no one heard. But then, you're right. She turned. The young soldier stood in the doorway, helmet tucked under his arm, hair damp with sweat. He shifted nervously, as though speaking to her carried weight. What you said, he continued softly. Routine, you're right. They knew exactly what we'd do, like they'd been here before. Her eyes narrowed, or like someone told them. He hesitated, his gaze flickered to the ground, then back to her. Do you think it's someone here? She didn't answer, because she wasn't sure she could trust him either. Instead, she studied his face, the way his hands fidgeted, the fear swimming behind his eyes. He was young, too young to hide emotion. If he were the traitor, would he look this raw, or was that the perfect disguise? She let the silence stretch before finally saying, trust is earned, not given. He nodded slowly, almost like he understood. But when he turned to leave, she caught something in his posture, a slump, a weight. He wasn't just scared, he was carrying something. Something he hadn't said. Sleep didn't come. She lay in her bunk, boots still on, rifle within reach. The room buzzed with the faint hum of generators outside, the occasional bark of a dog in the distance, the metallic clink of equipment shifting as soldiers moved in their sleep. She stared at the ceiling, tracing cracks in the plaster. Her chest ached. She wanted rest. She wanted peace, but peace had left her years ago. Instead, her mind returned to the village. The faces, the fire, the screaming. She pressed her palms against her eyes until stars burned behind them, but the images didn't fade. They never did. Her ears caught movement outside, boots against gravel. Slow, deliberate, not patrol, too soft for patrol. She sat up, gripping her rifle, heartbeat quick, breath shallow. The boots stopped near the comms room, a faint creak of a door, silence. She rose, moving quiet as shadow, down the narrow hall, past the sleeping quarters. Her boots barely brushed the floor. She reached the comms room door, cracked just slightly open, light spilling through. Voices low, urgent. She pressed herself against the wall, listening. Convoy delayed, yes, but checkpoint failed. A pause, crackle of static. No, she saw through it, won't be so easy again. Her blood froze. She knew that voice. A soldier's voice. One of their own. Her grip on the rifle tightened until her knuckles ached. She wanted to burst in, wanted to drag the truth into the light, but instinct held her back. Not yet, not without proof. The voice hushed quick. The door creaked. She slipped back into shadow, pressing against the wall as Boots approached. The figure stepped out, head down, moving fast. She caught only a glimpse in the dim light, just enough. It wasn't the young one. Her stomach twisted. It was someone older, someone the others trusted. Her pulse hammered as the figure disappeared into the dark. She swallowed hard, steadying herself. She had her answer, but she couldn't prove it, not yet. And without proof, her word meant nothing. Not to the commander, not to the men, not to anyone. She leaned against the cold wall, chest heaving. Betrayal clawed at her lungs. Someone here was feeding them to the enemy. And if she spoke too soon, she'd be branded paranoid, disobedient, maybe even dangerous. So she kept it inside. Another secret, another weight. But one thought screamed louder than the rest, echoing in her skull until it became a vow. If they thought she was silent before, they hadn't seen anything yet. Because now her silence wasn't just penance. It was war. The floodlights buzzed outside, the night deepened. And somewhere just beyond the wire, eyes were watching. Waiting. Why was it that silence felt heavier than gunfire? She crouched in the half-lit corner of the abandoned checkpoint, her breath fogging against the icy draft that seeped through cracked concrete. The storm had passed, leaving behind a soaked earth that smelled of rust and smoke. Water dripped from the ceiling in slow, rhythmic taps, like a clock ticking down to something she didn't want to name. Alina closed her eyes for a moment, pressing her back to the wall. The memory of Ramirez's body being lifted out earlier still clung to her like an unwelcome shadow. She had stood straight when they covered his face. She hadn't cried, not in front of the others, but the ache was there, deep and raw, just beneath the armor of silence she had forced herself to wear. Across from her, Corporal Dane fiddled with the bolt of his rifle, hands shaking slightly though he tried to hide it. He was young, maybe 23, the kind of soldier who still carried a photo of his high school sweetheart tucked into his vest pocket. He had shown it once, late at night by the fire. She said she'd wait, he had whispered, eyes hopeful and naive. Alina wondered if he believed that promise now. The radio crackled, a burst of static that made everyone freeze. Then came the voice, cold, controlled. Unit Bravo status update. Alina pulled the mic close, forcing steadiness into her tone. Holding position. 1 casualty. Enemy movement suspected North Ridge. There was a pause. The kind of pause that told her command was weighing options, balancing lives against maps. Copy, came the reply at last. Reinforcements delayed. Hold ground. Hold ground. 2 words that felt like a death sentence. She set the radio down and looked at her team. Dane, Ortiz, the twins Marcus and Hale who bickered constantly but moved like one body in the field. And Sergeant Cole, the oldest among them, his face carved with lines of loss, his silence a language Alina had come to respect. They were watching her now, waiting for her eyes to tell them what command hadn't. "They're not coming," Dane muttered, voice tight. Alina didn't answer, not yet. She scanned the dark edges of the room, listening to the dripping water, the distant echo of wind dragging through broken doors. Something gnawed at her, sharp and insistent. The ridge. Ramirez had seen something before the blast. His last words echoed in her head. "He's not what he seems." Who was he? Ortiz broke the silence. "We can't just sit here, they'll circle us, cut us off." "And do what?" Marcus snapped. "Run into the hills, they'll pick us apart." Alina raised a hand and the argument died. Her voice was low, steady, though her chest burned with conflict. "We hold, we wait, but we don't sit blind." Hale frowned, meaning. She pulled the scope from her pack, sliding toward a crack in the wall where moonlight filtered in. The night was sharp, every shadow etched in silver. She scanned the ridge. Stones, scrub, nothing moved, yet the air felt wrong, too still. Her heart quickened. She thought of her father's words long ago when she was a child and he had taken her hunting in the woods near their home. "Trust the silence," he had said. "If it feels unnatural, something's hiding inside it." She almost smiled at the memory, his hands rough, his voice patient, the way he had steadied her aim though she had never wanted to shoot the rabbit in her sights. "Sometimes," he had told her, "restraint is the hardest shot." The thought cut deep now, because here restraint could mean death. Behind her, Sergeant Cole finally spoke. His voice was gravel, each word heavy with unspoken history. "We're not alone." Everyone stiffened. No one asked how he knew, they just believed it. Elena lowered the scope, breathing slow. Positions quiet. They moved like shadows, taking angles, rifles ready but fingers hesitant. Time stretched thin, the kind that makes every breath sound like thunder in your chest. Then footsteps. Faint, measured, not the hurried scramble of an ambush but deliberate, one pair, echoing down the broken corridor outside. Dane swallowed hard. "They're baiting us." Elena motioned for silence. The steps grew closer. She could almost hear the scrape of leather, the faint rattle of metal gear. The door creaked. A figure stepped into view. Not enemy camouflage, not local militia rags, something else. Black fatigues, no insignia, face masked, only the eyes visible, cold, calculating. He raised his hand slowly, palms open. Elena's chest tightened. Every instinct screamed trap, but there was something strange in the way he looked at her, not at the group, not at the rifles aimed at him, but at her, as if he knew her. "Who are you?" she demanded, voice sharper than intended. The masked man tilted his head, then spoke, calm and unnervingly clear. "Not your enemy, not tonight." A ripple of unease passed through her team. Marcus muttered, "Hell no, shoot him." But Elena didn't, not yet. Something about the man's composure clawed at her gut. His voice was too even, his presence too bold. "What do you want?" she asked. He looked at her, and though half his face was hidden, she swore she saw the flicker of a smile in his eyes. "To warn you." Silence pressed down. Even the dripping water seemed to pause. "Warn us of what?" The man's gaze shifted, scanning the room, lingering briefly on each of her soldiers before returning to her. "Of betrayal." The word landed heavy, stirring the air like a storm about to break. Dane shifted uneasily. "What's that supposed to mean?" The man ignored him. He kept his focus on Elena. "You're looking in the wrong direction. The danger isn't out there." He gestured to the ridge beyond the wall. "It's closer, inside." Elena's pulse hammered. She wanted to dismiss it, to call it psychological warfare, a tactic to unnerve them. But Ramirez's last words cut through her doubt. "He's not what he seems." Her throat tightened. She forced strength into her tone. "Take off the mask." The man didn't move. His hand stayed raised. His eyes didn't waver. "You're not ready for that." Marcus cursed under his breath. Hale steadied his rifle, whispering, "Elena, say the word." But she didn't. She couldn't. Something inside her, a thread of instinct, maybe even fear, told her this was bigger than the moment. Shooting him would silence questions she wasn't ready to bury. The man finally lowered his hand, slowly, deliberately. "They'll turn on you when it matters most," he said softly, almost like a secret meant only for her. "And when they do, remember who tried to warn you." Then, before anyone could react, he stepped backward into the corridor. The shadows swallowed him whole. A beat of silence, then another. The sound of his footsteps faded until there was nothing. Marcus exhaled hard. What the hell was that? No one answered, not even Elena. Because deep inside, beneath the steel of her composure, one truth had begun to gnaw at her, worse than the enemy outside, worse than the storm of battle. The truth that trust, fragile and precious, might already be broken within her own walls. And if that was true, then everything, the mission, her team, her survival, could collapse from the inside before the enemy ever touched them. How do you lead when trust begins to fracture? The question chased Alina through the restless hours of the night. Sleep never came, only fragments of dreams blurred with memory. Her father's voice, Ramirez's last breath, the masked man's words. They'll turn on you when it matters most. She sat against the wall, rifle across her lap, watching faint moonlight creep through shattered windows. Her team slept in uneasy shifts. Dane curled in the corner, hands clutched over his chest as though holding that faded photograph inside his vest. Marcus and Hale lay back to back, one always half awake, muttering occasionally in their sleep. Ortiz snored quietly, his head tilted, a rag covering his eyes. And Sergeant Cole, the old soldier, didn't sleep at all. He stood near the door, silent as stone, eyes fixed on the darkness outside. Alina envied him or feared him, she couldn't tell which. Her chest tightened. The words of the masked man gnawed at her ribs like a secret she couldn't shake. Inside, closer than you think. A soft rustle. Cole shifted, stepping closer to her. His boots barely made a sound. He crouched down, his face carved by the moon's faint glow. "You're awake," he said. "So are you." His mouth twitched, almost a smile, but not quite. Old bones don't rest easy, especially not in places like this. They sat in silence a moment, the distant wind filling the gap. Then Cole's eyes, sharp and searching, met hers. "You don't trust him, the stranger?" "No," she said quickly, too quickly. He raised an eyebrow. "But you're thinking about his words." Alina's lips pressed together. She hated how easily he read her. She wanted to deny it, to wave away the doubt. But she couldn't. The image of those cold eyes staring into her stayed, branded in her mind. "He knew something," she whispered. "About us, about me." Cole studied her, then leaned in slightly. "If there's doubt, you have to bury it. Out here, even hesitation can kill." Her jaw tightened. "And if the doubt's the only thing keeping me alive?" He didn't answer. He just looked at her for a long, heavy moment, then stood and returned to his post by the door. His silence spoke louder than words. Alina rubbed her hands over her face. The weight on her chest felt unbearable. She wanted to scream, to demand answers from the night. But all she had was silence, and silence gave nothing freely. Morning came gray and thin. Clouds hung low, pressing down on the hills like a lid sealing them inside. The team stirred one by one, rubbing sleep from their eyes, stretching aching limbs. No one mentioned the stranger. No one dared, but the tension lingered like smoke after fire. They gathered around the cracked table in the center of the room. Maps spread out, stained and torn. Alina traced the ridge line with her finger, her voice low but steady. "We hold here until we have confirmation of movement. We'll rotate watches. No one alone." Marcus snorted. "Babysitting duty, great." Hale shot him a glare. "Shut it." Dane leaned forward, voice quiet. "Ma'am, what if he was right?" Every head turned toward him. His face flushed, but he held her gaze. "What if there really is a traitor? I mean, Ramirez." "Stop." Alina's tone cut like glass. "Ramirez died protecting this unit. Don't dishonor him with paranoia." Dane swallowed hard, eyes dropping. The room went still, but the damage was done. The thought was out there now, alive, impossible to cage. Ortiz broke the silence. "So what's the plan, really? Wait until they hit us again, because sitting here feels like suicide." Alina felt the weight of their eyes pressing against her, expecting, doubting, testing. She forced her voice calm. "We're not here to survive, we're here to finish the mission. Ramirez died for it, don't forget that." But even as she said it, her gut twisted. Because the mission's purpose, its true objective, still burned like a hidden brand inside her. They didn't know what she knew. They didn't know why she had volunteered. Not yet. Hours passed in slow, grinding silence. They took turns on watch, scanning ridges that seemed too still, listening to wind that carried whispers of something unseen. Alina paced the edges, restless, every sound a trigger, every shadow a threat. Then she caught it. A flicker of movement, far off just beyond the ridge, a glint like sun flashing off metal. She raised her scope, breath tight, there. A figure crouched low, watching, not militia, not ragged, gear too clean, too precise. Her blood chilled. They weren't dealing with rebels, not just rebels. This was something organized, something planned. She pulled back from the scope, chest hammering. For a heartbeat she considered telling them. But then betrayal. The word echoed again. If she was wrong, she'd spread panic. If she was right. Alina, Hale's voice cut into her thoughts. What is it? She lowered the scope, forced her voice steady. Nothing, just the wind. But her hands trembled as she set the scope down. She could feel Cole's eyes on her, measuring, judging. Night fell heavy. No fire this time, just shadows and whispers. She took first watch, sitting by the window, staring at the ridge, waiting. Her mind drifted, unbidden, back to home, back to her father. She remembered the last time she had seen him standing in the doorway of their house, his uniform pressed, his expression worn. He had looked at her the way Cole did now, studying, searching, worried. "You don't have to follow me," he had said softly. "The world already asks too much of us." But she had. She had signed her name, taken the oath, carried the weight. Not for glory, not even for country, for him. For the unfinished story of a man who had given everything and come back hollow. She blinked, forcing herself into the present. The ridge was silent, too silent. Then movement, closer this time. Her muscles coiled. She raised the scope again, a figure moving low between rocks, same black gear, same precision. She held her breath, finger brushing the trigger. One shot, clean, easy. But she hesitated. Because the figure turned its head slightly, and for a moment, even at that distance, she saw eyes staring back. Cold, calculating, familiar. The masked man. Her stomach dropped. He raised a hand, not in surrender, in signal, a warning. He pointed not at her, not at the ridge, but behind her. Her breath froze, she spun, and found Dane standing there, rifle raised, trembling, pointed at her chest. Her heart stopped. "Dane," her voice was barely a whisper. His eyes were wide, desperate, tears welling. I didn't want this, I swear." Her throat tightened. The room behind him stirred, the others half rising, confused, hands reaching for rifles. But Dane's aim didn't move. His lips quivered, voice cracking. "They said they'd kill her if I didn't, my sister. They have her, I can't lose her." The world tilted, Ramirez's warning, the masked man's words, the doubt she had buried, all of it rushed back like a flood. It was true. The betrayal wasn't a shadow. It was standing right in front of her, trembling, begging, with a gun to her chest. Her pulse thundered in her ears, and in that instant, Alina knew the mission had just changed. Because survival wasn't the only thing at stake anymore. Trust had broken, and once it breaks, it cuts deeper than any bullet. How do you tell a man to lower his weapon when his entire world is being held hostage? Alina didn't breathe. The barrel of Dane's rifle was so close she could see the faint scratches on the metal, the tremor in his hands, the panic in his eyes. Behind him, the rest of the team froze, Ortiz halfway to drawing his pistol, Marcus and Hale whispering frantic curses under their breath, Sergeant Cole standing still as stone. Time stretched thin and sharp. "Dane," Alina said softly, forcing her voice to steady, "look at me." His chest heaved, eyes darting between her and the others. "I don't want to hurt you, you know that." "Then don't," she whispered. "They'll kill her," his voice cracked. "My sister, they showed me proof, a video. She was crying, Alina. They said if I didn't do what they asked, if I did." His hands shook harder, the rifle wobbling dangerously. "They'll end her." Alina's throat tightened. She remembered the photograph he always carried, the one he had shown her by firelight. A girl with brown hair and a bright, clumsy smile, his anchor, his reason. now turned into his chain. "They're using you," Alina said, her tone firm but not harsh. "That's what they do. They twist love into a weapon." Dane's eyes glistened. "So what do I do? Just let her die?" The others shifted uncomfortably, rifles aimed but hesitant. Marcus whispered, "This is insane, Alina. Say the word and—" "Shut up," she snapped, never breaking eye contact with Dane. Her pulse thundered. She thought of her father, of the countless times he had told her that loyalty in the field wasn't tested by orders. It was tested by fear. And fear was standing in front of her now, begging for a way out. She slowly lowered her own rifle, letting it rest against her side, a gesture of trust or maybe desperation. "I'm not your enemy, Dane. Whatever they told you, whatever they're making you believe, we can find another way." He flinched, shaking his head. "You don't understand. They're watching, always watching. They said if I warned anyone if I failed." His voice trailed off, trembling. Cole's gravelly voice cut through the tension. Calm, controlled. "Son, if you fire that weapon, you'll be the one who kills her, not them." Dane's breath hitched. His grip faltered for a second, just a second, but long enough for Alina to step forward, slow and deliberate. "Please," she whispered, "don't let them turn you into what you're not." For a heartbeat, the room seemed to tilt. Dane's face crumpled, torn between terror and trust. Then, a sound outside, a sharp crack, a signal. Dane's eyes widened. Panic surged. He jerked the rifle, not at Alina now, but toward the door. And the world exploded. Gunfire ripped through the walls, shattering concrete, spraying dust into the air. The ridge wasn't silent anymore. Shadows poured down from the rocks, black-clad figures, precise, organized, weapons flashing in the dim light. Ambush. Alina dove, tackling Dane to the ground as bullets shredded the space where she had stood. The others returned fire, the room erupting into chaos, shouts, gunfire, the deafening roar of survival. Dane struggled beneath her, tears streaming. "I didn't mean, I swear." "Then fight with us," she shouted over the gunfire. She shoved him toward cover, yanking her rifle up and unleashing a volley at the advancing figures. 2 went down, 3 more pushed closer. Ortiz grunted, clutching his arm where a round had grazed him. Marcus and Hale fired in tandem, their voices breaking through the storm. Left flank. Reloading. Cole moved like a ghost, calm, efficient, his rifle spitting precise bursts. But even his eyes betrayed it now. The odds were too heavy. Alina's breath came ragged, smoke and dust choking her throat. She ducked behind the crumbling wall, ears ringing, heart pounding. The masked man's warning echoed in her head. "They'll turn on you when it matters most." Had he meant Dane, or was there more? She risked a glance through the scope. The attackers moved with unnerving discipline, their formation tightening, pushing the team inward. This wasn't a militia raid. This was surgical, professional. Her stomach twisted. Who were they really fighting? A cry tore through the chaos. "Hale." He staggered, blood spreading across his side. Marcus screamed his name, dragging him back behind cover, firing wildly in rage. Alina's chest clenched. Every second they were breaking apart. Every second the walls of trust crumbled further. "Cole," she shouted, "we can't hold here." His face hardened. He fired one last burst, then nodded. "Fall back, south tunnel, move." They scrambled, dragging Hale, covering each other as bullets chewed the concrete around them. Dane stumbled, rifle shaking, eyes wide with guilt and fear. But he stayed close, fighting now, his choice made, at least for the moment. They burst into the narrow tunnel, the darkness swallowing them. Echoes of gunfire followed, then faded as the distance grew. Their breaths filled the silence, ragged, desperate. Finally they collapsed against the damp walls, the smell of earth heavy around them. Hale groaned, clutching his side, Marcus pressing hard to stop the bleeding. Ortiz muttered curses under his breath, hands trembling as he reloaded. Cole leaned against the wall, face unreadable, but his eyes sharp, calculating. And Dane. He sat across from Alina, chest heaving, tears streaking his dirt-smeared face. "I'm sorry," he whispered, voice breaking. I didn't know they'd hit now. I wanted to save her." Alina stared at him, torn between fury and pity. She wanted to scream, to demand how he could gamble all their lives on one desperate hope. But when she opened her mouth, no words came. Because she understood. She saw in him the reflection of her own sacrifice, the way she had followed her father's shadow into this life, the way she had let duty consume everything else. She thought of the nights she had sat alone, wondering if it had been worth it, wondering if love could ever survive in a world that demanded so much blood. Her chest ached. She couldn't condemn him, not fully. But trust was gone. Cole finally spoke, his voice low, heavy. "We can't carry a liability, not out here." Dane's head jerked up, panic flooding his face. "No, please, I can fight. I swear I can." Cole's gaze hardened. "You already fought against us." The words cut deeper than any bullet. The air thickened, tension sparking like wires ready to snap. Alina raised a hand. Her voice shook, but she forced control. "No one decides anything tonight, not while we're bleeding, not while we're hunted." Cole's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. The others glanced between them, fear and doubt tangled in their eyes. The silence that followed was worse than gunfire. Alina leaned back against the wall, closing her eyes. Her heart hammered. Her mind raced. She thought of Ramirez. She thought of her father. She thought of Dane's sister somewhere out there, a pawn in someone else's game. And for the first time, Alina wondered if the mission wasn't about the enemy at all. Maybe the real fight was about holding the fragile threads of humanity together before they snapped. She opened her eyes, staring into the darkness of the tunnel ahead. The path twisted away, leading them deeper into unknown ground. Somewhere beyond, their answers waited. But tonight, in the damp silence, all she could feel was the weight of a team broken by fear, bound by duty, and haunted by betrayal. And the question that gnawed at her soul: could they survive not the enemy outside, but the cracks within? Why did the darkness in the tunnel feel heavier than the gunfire outside? The air was damp, thick with the scent of earth and rust, every drop of water echoing like a drumbeat in their skulls. Their boots sloshed in shallow puddles as they moved deeper, rifles raised, breaths ragged. Each step carried them further from the gunfire, but not from danger, not from doubt. Alina led the way, her flashlight slicing narrow beams through the black. The light caught glistening walls carved decades ago, reinforced with steel beams that creaked under unseen weight. This wasn't just a tunnel. It was old, forgotten, built for something else. Behind her, Hale leaned heavily against Marcus, blood staining his uniform, each groan swallowed by the pressing silence. Ortiz muttered prayers in Spanish under his breath, words tumbling fast as if racing death itself. Cole kept to the rear, his steps steady, eyes sharp, every movement screaming vigilance. And Dane. He walked in the middle, shoulders hunched, face pale, the guilt clinging to him like a second skin. His rifle hung loose in his hands, not from carelessness but from the crushing weight of choice. Every few steps, Alina felt his eyes on her back, heavy with desperation. She didn't look at him, not yet. The tunnel stretched on, swallowing time. Minutes felt like hours, breaths felt like battles. Alina's flashlight flickered across rusted pipes, collapsed sections, graffiti etched by hands long gone. Then something new. A symbol carved deep into the wall, not militia, not random, military. Her stomach nodded. Cole's voice broke the silence, low and gravelly. These tunnels, they weren't built by them. Alina nodded slowly, her throat dry. No, they were built by us. The others froze. Marcus frowned. What the hell are you saying? Her beam swept across another wall, catching faded stenciled letters. U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. 1974. Ortiz cursed. Hale groaned. Even Cole's silence carried weight. Alina's pulse quickened. These weren't enemy tunnels. They were American, abandoned, yes, but still here, still known. The ambush, the precision, the masked man. Pieces clicked, jagged and cruel. This wasn't a war against rebels. It was something deeper, dirtier. A war against ghosts wearing familiar uniforms. She pressed on, faster now, needing the walls to give her more answers. Finally, the tunnel split into a chamber, wider, filled with the remnants of old supply crates, rusted barrels, broken cots. Dust hung thick in the beam of her light. The air smelled of mildew and secrets. They collapsed into the space, exhausted. Marcus eased Hale down, pressing fresh bandages to the wound. Ortiz scavenged through crates, muttering about water, food, anything. Cole scanned the walls, eyes sharp, searching for danger even in the stillness. Alina stood at the center, hands trembling slightly on her rifle. The weight in her chest was unbearable. She wanted to scream, to break the silence with truth. But truth was a weapon, and weapons cut. Dane finally spoke. His voice was cracked, small. "You knew." The words hung, fragile and accusing. The others turned, their tired eyes snapping to her. Alina's breath caught. "Knew what?" Marcus demanded, suspicion sharp. Dane's gaze stayed fixed on her. She knew this wasn't just a rebel fight. She knew there was more, didn't you? Her chest ached. Her father's face flashed in her memory. His silence when she had asked why he couldn't sleep at night. His refusal to talk about missions that were classified. She had joined to find answers, to carry his shadow until it revealed its shape. Now the shape stood around her. "Alina," Cole said, his voice rough, warning. Her throat tightened. Every instinct screamed to lie, to bury it, to protect the mission's secrecy. But their eyes, her team's eyes, burned with something she couldn't ignore. Trust, already fractured, now hanging by a thread. "Yes," she whispered at last. The room froze. "I knew," she continued, forcing each word. "Not all of it, not everything, but I knew this mission wasn't clean, that we weren't fighting who they told us, that Ramirez died for something bigger than what we were told." Marcus cursed, shoving to his feet. "You lied to us." Hale groaned, wincing, but his voice was sharp. "We bled for this, and you knew." Ortiz slammed a crate shut, his prayer breaking off into silence. Alina's chest burned. "I didn't lie. She stopped, realizing the weight of the word. "I couldn't tell you, because if I did, it would have made you targets before you even stepped foot here. That's how they work. Secrets aren't just information, they're shackles." Dane shook his head, tears brimming. "And you let me carry mine alone." Her breath caught, his pain cut deeper than any bullet. Cole finally stepped forward, his face carved with stone, his voice like gravel dragged across steel. "She's right. Secrets protect as much as they poison, but now they're out, and you all have a choice." Marcus's fists clenched. "Choice? We don't have a damn choice. We're rats in a maze built by our own." Cole's eyes hardened. "Choice is all we have. Do we keep fighting each other, or do we fight to make it out?" Silence heavy, unyielding. Alina's hands shook. She wanted to speak, to steady them, to promise something more than survival. But what could she promise? Her father had promised honor and come home hollow. Ramirez had promised trust and died in her arms. And now she was asking them to follow her through shadows built by their own side. Her heart ached with the weight of it. Then a sound. Faint, metallic, from the far wall. Her flashlight swung, catching movement. A door, half buried in debris, rattled. Everyone froze, rifles snapped up. The door groaned open, and the masked man stepped through. Dust swirled around him, his black fatigues blending into the shadows. His eyes gleamed in the light, calm, knowing. No one fired, no one moved. He raised his hand, not in surrender, not in warning, but in invitation. "You've finally seen it," he said softly, "the truth." Alina's breath caught, her team's rifles wavered. Marcus muttered a curse, Ortiz whispered a prayer, Dane's hands trembled, Cole's jaw clenched. And Alina felt the ground tilt beneath her, because deep down she realized the most terrifying truth of all. The enemy wasn't just outside. The enemy had been theirs all along. Why didn't anyone fire? The tunnel chamber seemed to hold its breath. Dust shimmered in the thin beams of light, every heartbeat echoing like a hammer against stone. Rifles remained raised, but fingers trembled against triggers. No one moved. No one dared. The masked man stood calm, steady, his presence filling the air heavier than gunpowder. He wasn't just an enemy. He wasn't just another face in the crosshairs. He was something else, something Alina wasn't ready to name. His voice, when it came, was low, measured. You shouldn't have come here. Marcus spat on the ground, rage burning through exhaustion. You're damn right we shouldn't have, but we did, so drop the mask and face us like a man. The man tilted his head. Slowly, deliberately, he reached up. His fingers gripped the edge of the fabric, and then, in one fluid motion, he pulled it away. The breath left Alina's chest. The others stiffened. Marcus cursed under his breath. Ortiz clutched his cross tighter. Hale's weak groan filled the silence. The man's face was scarred, hardened by years of battles, but unmistakably American. His uniform bore no flag, no insignia, but his eyes carried the weight of too many missions buried under lies. He wasn't the enemy, he was one of them. Her knees weakened as the realization sank in. You, she whispered. His gaze locked onto hers, unblinking. You look just like him. The room spun, her stomach dropped. Who? Marcus demanded. The man's answer was simple, final, her father. Alina's breath shattered. Her vision blurred at the edges, heart slamming against her ribs. Memories flooded her father's silence, his refusal to answer questions, his haunted eyes in the dead of night. The man took a step closer, voice tightening. He was my commanding officer. We built these tunnels together. We carried secrets no one else could carry, and when it all collapsed, when command abandoned us, he walked away, left it buried, left me buried. Alina's throat closed. Her rifle trembled in her hands. You're lying, Marcus snapped, but his voice cracked with doubt. The man shook his head. You think this war is about rebels, about villages? No, it's about cleaning up what they left behind. Every one of you was sent here not to fight enemies, but to erase the evidence. The words echoed, sinking like knives into the chamber's silence. Ortiz dropped his rifle slightly, whispering, Mater de Dios. Hale coughed, blood flecking his lips. We're pawns. Alina's mind roared. She wanted to deny it, to scream that her father hadn't abandoned anyone. But the man's eyes, broken, raw, spoke truths that paper reports and commendations never could. Her father hadn't come home whole, because part of him had been buried here, alongside this man. The weight of it crushed her chest. The man's tone softened, almost pleading. Alina, you don't have to repeat his mistake. Don't follow orders that bury the truth. You've already seen it, you've already felt it. The team looked at her, their trust fractured, their hope thin. But their eyes all asked the same question. What now? Marcus's jaw tightened. We put him down. He's the reason we're here. Ortiz's voice cracked. And if he's telling the truth? Cole remained silent, his face carved in shadow, unreadable. Dane, shaking, finally stepped forward. His voice trembled, but his words cut through. If we kill him, we kill the truth with him. Alina's heart pounded. The chamber seemed smaller, the walls pressing closer. Her father's voice whispered in memory, never let them see what you carry. But here she was, carrying his ghost, carrying his silence, with her team waiting for her to choose. Her finger hovered over the trigger. Every second stretched into eternity. The man's gaze didn't waver. Your father spared me once. That's why you exist. That's why you're here. Now you have to choose silence or truth. Her hands shook violently. She wasn't just choosing for herself. She was choosing for all of them, for Ramirez, for Hale bleeding out on the ground, for Dane drowning in guilt, for Marcus and Ortiz whose faith in the mission was already ash. Her breath broke. If I let you live, they'll hunt us all. The man nodded. They already are. Her chest ached, torn in two. To kill him would be obedience. To spare him would be rebellion. Both roads carried death. Cole's voice, gravel low, cut through. Elena, decide now. The chamber pulsed with silence. Her heart screamed. Her father's shadow loomed. And then her hands steadied. She lowered her rifle. Gasps broke around her. Marcus cursed. Ortiz crossed himself. Dane exhaled like he'd been drowning. Hale groaned, too weak to protest. Elena's voice came soft, cracked, but unshakable. We're done being pawns. We walk out with the truth. The man's eyes flickered. Gratitude, pain, something unspeakable. But the ground trembled. A distant rumble shook dust from the ceiling. Explosives, charges planted long before. Cole cursed under his breath. They're collapsing it. The man's expression hardened. They'll bury it all, and you with it. He looked at Elena one last time, something unspoken passing between them. Regret, warning, kinship. Then he turned, disappearing into the shadows of another tunnel. Elena's breath hitched, torn between chasing him and saving her team. The choice ripped at her bones, but Hale's weak cry pulled her back. She spun, grabbing Marcus's shoulder. Get him up, we move now. They ran, boots pounding against trembling earth, flashlights slicing through choking dust. The tunnel roared around them, beams groaning, walls cracking. Every step was a battle against time. Explosions echoed like thunder, chasing them, devouring the ground. Ortiz stumbled, Marcus pulled him up. Dane pushed forward, teeth clenched, guilt driving his strength. Cole carried Hale's weight without complaint, his jaw set like steel. Elena led, lungs burning, eyes stinging, her heart tearing. Finally light, a faint glow ahead, daylight. They burst out of the tunnel just as it collapsed behind them, a cloud of earth and fire swallowing the entrance. The roar faded into silence. They stood in the ruins of a forgotten village, gasping, bleeding, broken. The sky above was streaked with gray, the sun bleeding through clouds like a wound. No one spoke. Elena turned, staring at the collapsed tunnel. Buried beneath it were secrets, lies, and the ghost of her father's war. Buried with it was the man who carried part of his truth. Her hands trembled, but her voice steadied. We carry this out, no matter what it costs. Marcus muttered, bitter but resigned. If command doesn't kill us first. Ortiz crossed himself again, whispering, then we die with truth. Dane's eyes glistened, but he stood taller, stronger. Cole said nothing, but for the first time, his silence felt like agreement. Elena looked at them, her team battered, fragile, yet unbroken. And in that moment, she understood what her father never could. Sometimes silence protects, sometimes silence kills. But dignity doesn't speak. It simply acts. The wind carried the last of the dust into the horizon. The team stood in silence, the weight of their choice pressing heavy. No cheers, no victory, just the echo of survival and the quiet promise that truth would not stay buried forever. And as Elena lifted her rifle, scanning the horizon, the world felt both heavier and lighter. Her father's shadow no longer haunted her, it walked beside her. The screen fades to black. Only silence remains,